Their first conversation felt like the calm before the storm, gentle on the surface, polite in all the right places, and dangerously misleading the way quiet things often are. Nothing about it should have lingered. There were no sparks loud enough to notice, no words heavy enough to remember. And yet it stayed. She spoke little, not because she had nothing to say, but because she didn't waste words. Still waters run deep, and he felt at the moment she looked away instead of leaning in, the pause in her voice, the way her eyes held back something unspoken. It unsettled him more than confidence ever could. He had met women who filled rooms with laughter, with charm, with practiced desire. He knew how to handle those. But this was different. This was quiet restraint, the kind that hides strength behind softness, the kind that doesn't chase, but changes the direction of everything. He didn't know it then, not fully, but that first conversation, so calm, so ordinary, was already shifting something inside him. And by the time the silence settled between them, it was too late to pretend it meant nothing. Before we explore this story, take a second, subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who loves billionaire romance stories. It helps the channel more than you know. The hotel lobby smelled like expensive leather and vanilla. Marble floors stretched beneath chandeliers that dripped light like honey. Julian Hawthorne leaned against the bar, swirling whiskey he hadn't touched, watching the entrance with the casual arrogance of a man who rarely waited for anything. He was 34, restless, sharp-edged in all the ways his older brother wasn't. Where Sebastian Whitlock carried the weight of empires with quiet dignity, Julian carried impatience like a blade. When Clara Whitmore walked through the glass doors, he noticed her immediately. She wore a navy dress that was modest by design, her hair pulled back simply, her heels low and practical. She looked around the lobby with the careful attention of someone who didn't belong, but wouldn't apologize for being there anyway. Julian straightened. He'd invited her under the guise of a casual introduction. His brother, he'd said, might be interested in meeting someone from her field. Strategic partnerships. Professional courtesy. All lies wrapped in half-truths. He crossed the lobby in long strides. Clara Whitmore? She turned. Her eyes were brown, warm but guarded. Julian Hawthorne. He extended his hand. Her grip was firm, but brief. She pulled away first. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, gesturing toward a quiet corner booth. "I know it's late notice." "It is—" She followed him, settling into the booth with her purse balanced on her lap. "You mentioned your brother might have business interests aligned with mine." Julian smiled, leaning back. "He might. I wanted to meet you first." Her gaze sharpened. "Why?" "Curiosity." "About what?" He studied her face. She didn't flinch, didn't shift, just waited. "You have a reputation for being principled," he said slowly. "I wanted to see if it was real." Clara's expression didn't change. "Principles aren't performances, Mr. Hawthorne. They don't need an audience." He laughed softly. "Fair enough." They spoke for 20 minutes. Surface-level questions about her work, her background, her goals. She answered everything with precision but no flourish, no embellishment, no attempt to charm him. Then Julian shifted forward, his tone dropping. "Let me ask you something personal." She tilted her head. "You can ask. Do you believe in loyalty? The kind where someone gives everything, no hesitation, no conditions." Clara's jaw tightened slightly. "Loyalty isn't surrender. If you're asking whether I believe in blind obedience, the answer is no." "What about marriage?" he pressed. "Would you follow your husband's lead in all things? Follow or be dragged?" Julian blinked. Clara leaned forward just an inch. Her voice remained calm, but something harder flickered beneath it. "If you're looking for someone who will stand beside a man and support him, I believe in that. But if you're looking for someone who will disappear into his shadow and call it devotion, you're talking to the wrong person. Julian felt something twist in his chest. Shame, attraction, both at once. You think I'm testing you, he said quietly. I know you are. And you don't care? Clara stood, smoothing her dress. I don't perform for tests, Mr. Hawthorne. Thank you for the conversation. She walked away without looking back. Julian sat in the booth long after she left, the whiskey untouched, his pulse unsteady. He'd invited her for Sebastian. A gesture, a favor, a way to appease his brother's loneliness, while proving to himself that no woman could truly measure up to the impossible standard Sebastian deserved. But somewhere in those 20 minutes, the test had turned. He wasn't evaluating her anymore. He was trying to break her, and she'd walked away unbroken. Worse, he wanted to follow. 3 weeks passed before Julian reached out again. This time, the message was different. Honest, almost. He apologized for the invasive questions, said he'd been out of line, then asked if she'd be willing to speak with Sebastian. Clara stared at the email for a long time before responding. She didn't trust Julian, but curiosity had sharp teeth, and she wanted to know what kind of man could make someone like Julian hesitate. She agreed. A phone call first. Nothing more. Sebastian's voice came to the line like warm rain, deep, unhurried. Texture was something gentle and unguarded. Ms. Whitmore, he said, I apologize for my brother's approach. He can be intense. Clara exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Intense is one word for it. Sebastian laughed softly. What word would you use? Invasive. That's fair. They talked for an hour. Then, too, he asked about her work, her passions, what brought her joy. He listened like listening mattered. He made her laugh without trying too hard. He told her about his family, the weight of responsibility, the years he'd spent putting everyone else first. I always thought I'd have time later, Sebastian admitted. For myself, for someone, but later kept moving further away. And now, Clara asked, now I'm 41 and realizing later might never come unless I choose it. Something in his voice ached. Clara felt it settle in her own chest. They spoke 3 more times that week. Each conversation stretched longer than the last. He sent her books he thought she'd like. She sent him playlists. Small gestures that meant more than grand ones. One evening, Sebastian's tone shifted. Can I tell you something? He asked. Of course. You bring me peace. I don't know how else to say it. Talking to you feels like breathing. Clara's heart clenched. Sebastian, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know. She closed her eyes. The warmth in his voice was real. So was the longing. But somewhere in the back of her mind, Julian's questions lingered like bruises. Would you follow? Would you give everything? She hadn't lied to Julian. But she hadn't told Sebastian the full truth either. She was afraid. Afraid that safety could be a trap. Afraid that kindness could be a prelude control. And she hated that Julian's voice still whispered doubt. 2 days later, Clara received a message from Julian. I need to tell you something. The man you spoke to that night in the hotel, that was me, and I wasn't honest. I wasn't vetting you for Sebastian. I was trying to see if someone like you could exist. I wanted to prove you couldn't. But you did. And now my brother's falling for you. And I don't know if I warned you or ruined everything. You should know, Sebastian is nothing like me. He's better, softer, but we're still brothers. And you'll judge us both eventually. Clara read the message 3 times. Her hands trembled. She'd known Julian was testing her. She hadn't known why, and now she understood. He hadn't been protecting Sebastian. He'd been protecting himself from believing someone like her could be real. Amelie Fairmont had always been beautiful, The kind of beautiful that turned heads, stopped conversations, and made people forget what they were saying mid-sentence. She and Clara had been friends since college. Close, or so Clara thought. But closeness, like loyalty, could be a performance too. When Amelie learned Clara was speaking with Sebastian Whitlock, something shifted. Amelie requested a meeting. Professional interest, she said. She was in marketing. After all, a billionaire's network could be valuable. Sebastian agreed. A lunch meeting. Public. Polite. They met at a restaurant with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Amelie arrived wearing red, a dress that clung, heels that clicked, confidence that radiated like heat. Sebastian stood when she approached, shook her hand, smiled politely. "Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Whitlock." "Sebastian, please." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Julian mentioned you and Clara are close." Amelie's smile sharpened. "We are, though I wonder if Clara has told you everything." Sebastian's expression remained neutral. "What do you mean?" Amelie leaned forward slightly. Her perfume was bold, floral, deliberate. "Clara's wonderful. Sweet. Innocent. But let's be honest, she's not exactly your type." Sebastian tilted his head. "What do you think my type is?" "Someone who fits your world." Amelie's voice dropped, warm and intimate. "Someone who understands power, who knows how to stand beside a man like you and make him look even better." Sebastian set down his fork. "You think Clara doesn't fit?" "I think Clara's lovely," Amelie said smoothly. "But she's quiet, reserved. Men like you need someone who can match your presence. Someone who can walk into a room and own it." She paused, her gaze steady. "Someone like me?" Sebastian studied her for a long moment. His face gave nothing away. Then he spoke, his voice calm but edged with something final. "Ms. Fairmont, I appreciate your honesty, but you've misunderstood what I'm looking for." Amelie's smile faltered. "I don't need someone to own a room," Sebastian continued. "I've spent my entire life in rooms full of people trying to be seen. It's exhausting. What I need, what I want, is someone who doesn't need the spotlight, someone who chooses depth over display." He leaned back slightly. "Clara doesn't perform. She doesn't need to, and that's exactly why she fits." Amelie's cheeks flushed. Anger, humiliation, both. "I think we're done here," Sebastian said gently. "Please give Clara my best." He stood, left cash on the table, and walked out without looking back. Amelie sat alone, her hands trembling, her pride shattered. But what she didn't know, what Sebastian didn't know yet, was that the meeting hadn't been her idea. Julian had suggested it, subtly, carefully, a test wrapped in temptation. And Sebastian had passed. Julian waited 3 days before calling his brother. "How did the lunch go?" he asked casually. Sebastian's voice was tired. "You knew what she was going to do." Silence. "You sent her," Sebastian said. "Didn't you?" Julian didn't deny it. "I needed to know." "Know what?" "If you'd choose comfort over chemistry, safety over fire." Sebastian exhaled slowly. "You're still testing her. Even now." "I'm testing you," Julian corrected. "Because if you're serious about Clara, you need to be ready. Women will come. They always do. And if one pretty face and a bold offer is enough to shake you, then you're not ready." "I didn't choose Amelie," Sebastian said quietly. "I chose Clara. Weeks ago. This doesn't change that." Julian's jaw tightened. "Then why do you sound uncertain?" "Because I don't know if Clara will choose me when she finds out what you've done." Julian ended the call without responding. He'd meant to protect Sebastian, to ensure his brother didn't fall for someone who couldn't handle the weight of their world. But somewhere along the way, the tests had become traps. And Julian wasn't sure anymore who he was protecting or punishing. Meanwhile, Clara received a message from Amelie. I met with Sebastian. He rejected me. But you should know this isn't over. Julian told me to test him. And if Julian's playing games, so is Sebastian. Be careful, Clara. They're brothers. They protect each other. Not you. Clara read the message 3 times, her stomach twisting. She'd suspected manipulation. She hadn't known the depth. She called Sebastian that night. Tell me the truth, she said without preamble. Did you know Julian sent Amelie? Sebastian hesitated. I suspected. And you didn't tell me? I wanted to handle it myself. Handle it. Clara's voice cracked. Or control it? Clara, I'm not a pawn in whatever game you and your brother are playing, she said quietly. If you want me, you don't get to keep secrets. You don't get to protect me by deciding what I should know. Sebastian's voice dropped. You're right. I'm sorry. Silence stretched between them. I need space, Clara finally said. Not to leave, just to think. Take all the time you need, Sebastian replied. I'll be here. She hung up, and for the first time, Sebastian felt the weight of restraint, the ache of wanting someone and choosing to let them go anyway. A week passed. Then 2. Sebastian didn't call, didn't text, didn't push. Julian, restless and guilty, finally went to Clara's apartment. She opened the door, unsurprised. I wondered when you'd show up. I need to explain, Julian said. No. Clara stepped aside, letting him in. You need to confess. He flinched. They sat across from each other in her small living room. Clara waited. Julian exhaled slowly. I sent Amelie. I told her to test Sebastian. I thought if he could be swayed, you'd be better off knowing before you fell too deep. And if he passed? Clara asked. Then you'd be safe. Safe, Clara repeated softly. You don't get to decide what's safe for me, Julian. You don't get to play God with people's hearts just because you're scared. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. Clara's gaze was steady. You're terrified that your brother might find something real. Because if he does, it means you could too. And that terrifies you more than anything. Julian looked away. I knew, Clara said quietly. He froze. What? I knew Amelie was testing him. I suspected you were behind it. She leaned forward, but I stayed quiet. I wanted to see what Sebastian would choose when temptation came knocking. Julian stared at her. You were testing him too. I was watching, Clara corrected. There's a difference. Julian stood abruptly. Then why are you still here? If you knew everything. Because he chose me anyway, Clara said simply. Even knowing I might leave. Even giving me space instead of control. He chose restraint over ego. And that's the man I want. Julian left without another word. That night, Clara called Sebastian. I'm ready, she said when he answered. For what? To stop testing. To stop protecting myself. To choose you. Sebastian's voice cracked. Clara, I don't need perfect, she continued. I need honest. And you've been that, even when it hurt. I love you, Sebastian said quietly. I've loved you since the first conversation. I just didn't want to say it until you were ready to hear it. Clara smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm ready. They met the next day, in person, face to face. Sebastian didn't rush, didn't grab her, just stood there, hands at his sides, waiting. Clara stepped forward, took his hands, held them. Your innocence doesn't make me weak, Sebastian said softly. It drives me wild because it's rare, because it's real, and because it makes me want to be better. Clara kissed him, slow, soft, certain, and when they pulled apart, Sebastian smiled. You knew all along, didn't you? about Julian, about the tests. I suspected, Clara admitted, but I needed to see which one of you would choose restraint over ego. And you passed. She touched his face gently. Julian failed. Sebastian pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I'm glad you stayed quiet. So am I. Somewhere across the city, Julian sat alone in his penthouse, staring at his phone. He'd wanted to break her, to prove she couldn't exist. Instead, she'd proven he was the one who needed fixing. And for the first time in years, Julian Hawthorne felt something he'd forgotten how to name. Regret. If this story touched you, if you felt the ache, the longing, the quiet triumph of choosing love over fear, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories live because you share them, because you believe, like Clara did, that real love isn't loud. It's patient, it's honest, and it's worth the wait. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been tested and stayed true anyway. Because stories like this remind us that integrity isn't weakness, silence isn't surrender, and sometimes the quietest choices change everything.